All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, feast your eyes and tune your ears. It's that time again. We are live with another episode of The Authority Project. It's the video podcast streamed on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Periscope, where we talk to digital marketers, business coaches, and creators of all kinds on how they've built authority in their field and how you can mimic their success. Developing authority, building your audience, and attracting better clients to your own business. Now, without further ado, let's bring to the virtual stage your host, Brian S. Arnold.
All right, we are in the building right now. We are here. We are live, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. And I have my new good friend here, Brant Menswar. I hope I got that right. Hope I said that right. Can you hear me? Can you hear me right now?
Sorry, man. Hold on a minute.
Okay, hold on. He'll be on in a second here. He'll get this together. We were just going good stuff. We're just going good. We were just going good. But he is here. Just trying to get him to listen to hear. See if he can hear me very shortly here. And
I lost you.
Yeah, you lost me. Okay. All right.
Come on.
All right. Let me see if we can kick you out, maybe, and come back in. Hold on one second.
Okay. I got you.
You got me? Okay.
I got you.
All right, here we go. Technical difficulties all the time. You know how these things go live.
I do.
People?
I do.
Yes. But we are here. We are in the building. And we got a lot to talk about here. We got, I was trying to see if I got your name right. Brant Menswar.
You got it, man. You got it.
And I am so excited to have this man here on the show. This is going to be a very different one. I'm telling you right now, he has something, and I just want everybody just to grab onto this and just learn and apply it. Just try this out, because I have a lot to say, but before we go get into it, please just tell us, first of all, who you are personally and then professionally.
Sure, man. So, born and raised in Manchester, New Hampshire, and came down to Florida to play baseball in college. Met my wife here and stayed, and have a couple of kids, and they're pretty much grown now, not 19 and 22. I spent 20 years in the music business with two different bands. One Fort Pastor in the Christian market first, and then Big Kettle Drum for the last decade or so in the general market, and started to speak as a full-time speaker about 6 years ago, and wrote my first book, a self-published book, 3 years ago, and Black Sheep, finally my first non-self-published book. It's not, I hate to say it's my first real book, but I look at it like it's my first real book. Comes out September 29th through Page 2 in the team there in Vancouver. So super excited about it.
Awesome. And that's really my first question, is what project you're currently working on. We got it already there. Black Sheep. I got to dab into it a week ahead, and I tell you what. And before I just, I'll let people know that I kind of tracked you down. I told you in the post, look, I was just like, I got to get this guy. He is with Brian Fanso. He was here a couple of weeks ago on the show, and I love Brian Fanso. Just amazing content. And we went for an hour or so with him, and I realized that I wasn't connected with him on LinkedIn. I was like, how's that possible? So the very first day he connected with me on LinkedIn, the next day I saw him with you on the program with him. Yeah. I was like, whoa, this guy's just flooring me right now with what he's saying. I was like, well, I gotta connect with him. I took people, I did everything you said. I went in there and took your worksheet. I just, man, I tell you what, just amazing stuff. And I just want to make a confession here that for the longest time, I had kind of given up on the whole motivational stuff. The whole, I stopped reading the books, and, you know, I stopped doing all these different things. And I just like, it took up until now to be like, you know what, this is really what I'm been searching for, something more tangible for me.
Sure.
And well, I have so many questions right now, but why don't we start first of all with your core values? Because this is what you're all about. So tell us right now, first of all, about your core values.
Yeah, you bet. So, you know, the book is centered around this idea that we have a flock of 5, what I call black sheep values. And these values are unchangeable. They are, I was 47 years old when I finally, somebody told me why a black sheep isn't valued like the rest of the flock by the farmers. And it's because a black sheep's wool cannot be dyed. And so every black sheep is 100% authentically original. So when I heard that, I was like, gosh, man, that's my whole goal in life, is to just be who I was uniquely created to be. And so for me, it was like, okay, so I have to discover these deeply held personal core values that are unchangeable, right? And so that sent me on my journey. So my flock of 5, I actually have 6. Yeah. And that is because I'm a rock star and we do everything to excess. I needed an extra, but mine are creativity, hope, impact, empathy, family, and authenticity. Every decision I make gets filtered through my black sheep values, and that took me a while to discover and to prove that they're mine and that I wasn't caring for someone else's sheep. And then learning to speak them into existence, right? That's the real game changer. It's not just discovering what they are, but being able to choose when and where they appear in your daily life for maximum impact. And that's when I started to experience transformation, which is a scary word, but it's the truth.
Yeah. I'm just going to go through like questions that I read a lot of questions while I was reading the book. So talk to us about your talk to us about Philanthropy Days real quick.
Yes. So Philanthropy Days, I have a very good friend who challenges me on what she calls Philanthropy Days. Yeah. And ultimately what that means is that I'm helping everybody else but me. And her point was this: look, she's like, I know that you care about impact, but if, she goes, here's, every time you reach the next rung on the ladder that you're climbing, your first instinct is to reach down and pull others up with you. And the problem with that is if you don't give yourself enough time to make sure that your footing is sure, then all that's going to happen is they're going to pull you back down. And it took me a long time to recognize that, right? And so the big shift I had to make, Brian, was if I told myself I couldn't do it, that I couldn't reach down and pull someone else up, I had a really hard time getting myself to go along with that and agree with it. But what I had to teach myself was to say not yet. Not no, but not yet. And so my point is, if I get to a larger platform, then I'm going to be able to have larger impact. And so that to me has learning to teach myself to say not yet. I'm going to help. I want to help. I'm going to reach down. But when I reach down, I want to pull up a whole mess of you. I don't just want to pull up one at a time. And so let's see if we can't, figure that out. So Philanthropy Days are what happen when I don't sort of make sure that I'm taking enough time for me to get my footing sure before I start to try to lift everybody up around me.
I love it. Do you feel that you're there now? Possibly getting there?
I'm on my way. This is the interesting thing. I feel like the things that really take off, right? The things that are really successful, I believe most of the time are a very simple concept that just no one's thought of before. And I feel like that's what this is. It is not, you don't have to, have a Harvard MBA to understand what I'm trying to say in the book. It's really simple, down to earth stuff that a fourth grader should be able to understand, which is just, You've got to define the things that matter most to you. Otherwise, what are you basing your decisions off of? Right? That's the real question. And the answer to that is feelings or emotions, which are horrible, horrible things to try to base your decisions off of because they change all the time. These values don't change. Our core values rarely change outside of a catastrophic event in your life.
I love it. And this is basically what this whole show is about, just building your platform, building your authority platform where you can find a space to build it and share it, and they will come. So I love how you're saying take some time for yourself to actually start building something before you try to bring everybody else along, right? Yeah. That's probably why I don't like multi-level marketing, but that's another issue over there.
It's true, right?
But talk to us now about deliberate intention, because I'm a big proponent of this, about being intentional about what you're doing.
Yeah. So there's, in my opinion, there's a massive difference between being intentional and acting with deliberate intention. Right. Okay. So the story I tell in the book is the last record that Big Kettle Drum recorded. We drove from Central Florida to West Hollywood to record the record, and had an incredible experience. We're driving back about a week later. We get to the New Mexico border. It's about 6 o'clock in the morning. We're the only car on the road, and all of a sudden I get pulled over. And so I'm like, I wasn't speeding. I was obeying the laws, I thought. And I'm like, what? I don't know why I'm being pulled over. Do I have a tail light out? And, the cop comes to the window and he said, do you know you were driving in the left-hand lane? And I was like, so? And he says, well, it's against the law to drive in the left-hand lane in this state unless you're passing. And I was like, I'm from Florida, man. We don't have laws. We do whatever we want to. He didn't think that was funny at all. But I just professed my ignorance. I'm like, I had no idea that was a law here. And so he let me go with a warning. I got in that right-hand lane, and I stayed in that right-hand lane through every state all the way back just to try to stay right. But what I have found, Brian, is that most of us live our lives just like that, right? We may be headed in the right direction. We know where we are going. We're saying, I knew where I was going. I was headed back home. So I knew my destination. I was headed in the right direction, but I was in the wrong lane. And that is what happens when you are intentional about something. I was intentional. I was going home, but I wasn't using deliberate intention, because if I was, I'd know the rules of the road and I would have been in the right lane and I wouldn't have gotten pulled over. And so that's sort of what it's like when you don't define your own rules. So we all agree on these traffic laws that we say, stop sign, we're going to stop, red light, we're going to stop, green light, we're going to go. But when it comes to your own rules, what about the rules of your life? We don't take the time to even figure out what they are. And so we end up, by accident or luck, reaching our destination instead of using deliberate intention on every turn we make. And that is the difference between living your life on purpose and just living your life.
I love it. So let's dive into these core values, and you can please include your coffee rules and as part of that example if you could. I just wanted to get people into this core values and the impact of it and how you live it on a daily basis.
So here's the interesting thing. There's a process to this. And I want to talk to you about yours, because I know you just took the assessment. And so, there is, if you go to findyourblacksheep.com, which is the book's website, there is an assessment that you can click on that says Find Your Flock. And it sort of walks you through 125 commonly held personal core values. It sort of says, what I want you to do is I want you to select all the words that you think are really important, right? That they resonate with you. If you go accountability, gosh, I like that word. I'm going to select that word. What ends up happening in that first pass of those 125 words, the average person over the last 2 years has selected at least 30 words. And so what that means is that you've got 30 different things in your life that are incredibly important to you. The challenge is when you try to honor 30 things on a regular basis.
Yeah.
It's impossible. You have set yourself up for failure. And so what happens is you start to feel shame, or you start to feel anxiety or depression, because there is no way for you to honor 30 out of 30 things on a daily basis. So what the next level is let's put all those words into another box and let's group them by likeness. So things like sympathy and empathy are in the same box. Things like achievement and success are in the same box. And we sort of break them down into 5 different areas. And then you get to pick one. What's your one non-negotiable? What's your one word that you can't live without from each box? And that gets you to your initial flock of 5. So I know you've done this. Can you share with everybody what your initial flock of 5 are?
Yes, I have it right over here. Power / authority.
Yep.
Which is part of the authority project. I guess that's probably why that's linked somehow.
Yeah.
But satisfying others.
Yep.
Faith.
Yep.
Connection.
Yep.
Equality.
Okay. So if I was coaching you one-on-one, what I would do right now is what I know for a fact is that in the 2 years that I've been coaching people, I have not coached a single person who the 5 that they started with were the 5 that they ended with.
I figured that, yeah.
So what ends up happening is this. We know, that 2 or 3 of those, without a doubt, are your black sheep values. 2 or 3 of those, you've just known it your whole life. You've lived it. You've experienced it. You can give me 20 different examples in your life of what those are. Yeah. But 2 or 3 of them are what I like to call aspirational sheep. You give me who you want to be, but not who you are. Okay. And that creates a significant challenge, because what happens after you sort of discover your initial flock of 5 is the next step is you have to track them for 2 weeks. You have to find, do they appear organically in your life without you trying? So at the end of each day, before you go to bed, I have you I do this exercise I call counting sheep, right? So not the kind that puts you to sleep, but these kind where you dig back through your day. Can you find evidence? Can you find proof that these things actually exist? Now, let me tell you where you would struggle based on your 5.
Okay.
So the thing that I'm looking at first is faith and connection. Okay. So what I would tell you is that the value is actually connection, and faith is an example of how you experience connection. And so oftentimes I'll have people tell me faith, family, community, and connection are 4 of my black sheep values. And the truth is, connection is the black sheep value, and faith and community and family are 3 ways that you experience connection. Okay. So for you, you have connection with your God, you have connection with your community, you have connection with your listeners, you have connection with your family. That is the value itself. And so it took me a minute, because when I first did this too, my first pass, I had faith as well. Yeah. But the challenge that I had, and this is the challenge I put forth to every person who puts faith as an answer, is what does that mean? What does faith mean? Yeah. Because your definition, I promise you, is probably not the same as mine. Okay. And so if that's the case, I had to look at how I live out, how I act out my faith. And so for me, hope, impact, and empathy, that is my faith. Okay. That's my faith. So for me, I know that I have to walk a mile in someone's shoes, right? To really, really understand where they're at. I have to make sure that the impact that I have in their life leaves them with hope. If I've done that, then I've honored my faith. If I haven't done that, that's where we start to run into some issues. So what I would say is faith gets brought underneath the value of connection. So now you have an extra slot in your stall for another black sheep, right? Right. So that's one. So let's look at a couple of these others. So satisfying others, that's a red flag, but in a good way, good way. Okay. So I look at that and say, one of the biggest challenges when you start to track to see which values are yours is that some of us have been raised to care for other people's sheep. Maybe you had a family member, a grandmother, a mother, a father, a sister, a brother that you sort of grew up caring for. And so you're you're conditioned to actually care for someone else's sheep. And what I will say is if I told you I don't want you caring for other people's sheep, you'd think I was a jerk, right? So I don't want to say that. What I do want to say, Brian, is this. I have no problem with you feeding other people's sheep. Yeah. Where I have an issue is if you take it into your care and you start treating it like it's your own, because every single day you have one job, and your job is to feed your sheep. That's it. So how are you going to give them something to nourish them? They don't have to feast. They don't have to have an 8-course meal. They might only get table scraps one day, but they have to eat every day. If you had 4 kids and you only fed 2 of them, how's that going to go for you at the end of the day? You know? They're going to disrupt your life, and your values work exactly the same. If you don't feed them every day, they will disrupt your life. And so you have to make sure there's enough food on the table to feed yours first. This is that in the airplane, the mask comes down, put your mask on first before you start putting everybody else's mask on, right? Same concept. You have to make sure you feed yours first. So what I would say is that as we dig and look at satisfying others, is that the real value? And we'd have to look at your past a little bit. We'd have to sort of look at your upbringing and go, okay, I totally understand what you're saying, but my guess is that we do something called leveling up. And the idea of wrapping faith underneath connection is leveling up. So we leveled up to the word connection, which includes all this stuff underneath it. I would say satisfying others would level up to a word like empathy or a word like service, where it's more than just satisfying others. Is it the fact that you are truly satisfying others that means the most to you? Or is it the act of service itself? Are you serving others without expectation? If that's part of what it is, then it's not satisfying others, because that you're telling me that your value is that they're satisfied.
Okay.
If you tell me that the act of service is what meant most to you, then you can see how satisfying others isn't actually the value at all. But it is something that you are doing, right? So you are serving others with this intention to make their lives better, to answer their need, whatever that might be. And so that's why the tracking process becomes incredibly important. So when we do this, I just finished a group training with 40 people on my book launch team, and we walked them through this process. It's a 5-week process, 5 weeks. Wow. To just make sure that you know that your sheep are yours, because so many of us, this was a massive learn for me, and this is something that I want your listeners to really hear, if nothing else.
Yeah,
the work that I do, the talking to people about the things that matter most to them and their purpose. I come across a lot of people who, for whatever reason, don't really like themselves all that much, right? And it could have been from horrible things that happened in their past, from bad decisions they might have made in the past, and they're holding themselves accountable to these things that make them not like themselves. But the truth, and this is really where the hope comes in, right? The truth is that a fraction of a percent of people do the work to truly discover what their black sheep values are. So my question always is, how do you know that the person that you don't like is actually you? Because I'm telling you, even in your answers, there's 2 or 3 of these that aren't right. If you think they're right. If you think they're right. And you're not finding evidence of them in your life because they're not real. You feel bad about yourself, but in fact, you shouldn't, because they're not your sheep. They're someone else's sheep that you have decided to care for. And that is where this work really starts to open things up and really gets you to truly love the person that you were created to be. You don't have to be somebody else. You're already enough. But can you get to the point where you understand what makes you enough? Because sometimes It's these things that you think you want to be, but they're not actually who you are.
Wow. Some deep stuff, man. I'm glad you're here, man. Deep stuff. Let me see here. Let me see if I got questions here. Here we go. Decisions.
Yeah.
Talk about decisions in the book. What if the decisions you make aren't giving you the returns that you want? You talk about making decisions.
Yeah.
And we got some comments in here. Sorry, I'm missing the comments here. I got some comments here. Let me get these comments up here, right?
Sure.
Doesn't satisfying others mean you want to satisfy yourself, says Germany. You get something out of service. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's getting, that's sort of diving into trying to get deeper to the real reason. Is it the act of satisfying others? Is it their satisfaction? These are the questions. You're right. It's not altruistic. So if that was the case, that's why I would question whether or not satisfying others. And I have people that put that down as their first path a lot, right?
Okay.
Because they're used to and they enjoy serving others. But you have to frame it in that right way to really get what the actual value is, because sometimes we confuse behaviors for values. And so the behavior is you were raised to be a good man, right? You were raised to help others. And that's fine. But is it the value or is it conditioned behavior? And that is where we have to dive in to find proof. And that's where the rubber hits the road. And you start to realize that even though it might be conditioned behavior, it doesn't mean that it shows up organically in your life all the time. But these black sheep values show up whether you like them or not. You just have to recognize that they're your sheep and not someone else's. And that's the real challenge, right? Yeah. So let's talk this question about decisions.
Yeah.
So how do you know if you've made a good decision? That's the question I have for you. How do you know if you've made a good decision?
I'm going to say the dumbest answer because I know what you're going to say, but come to the outcome.
Yeah, that's it though.
Yeah, right.
I've asked this question to tens of thousands of people over the last couple of years, and everybody gives me the same answer, which is based on some sort of an outcome or some sort of a result as to whether or not it was a good decision. Right. And I have the same response every time. Unless your name is Gandalf or Glinda, you don't have that type of power. You ain't a wizard. You don't control outcomes, right? And that's, as a control freak, man, does that rub me the wrong way when I found that out. But the science tells us that we don't control outcomes. But when we use an outcome to justify whether a decision was good or bad, that's something that behavioral scientists call outcome bias. And the science doesn't support that, right? So all that we control is the deliberate intention that goes into making the decision. We don't control the outcomes. And so if that's the case, that deliberate intention that goes into making your decision has to be born from these black sheep values, number one. It has to consider all of the facts that you can get your hands on, number two. And then it has to honor what you're feeling in the moment. And when I say honor what you're feeling, I don't mean resolving feelings. I mean recognizing them and saying, I get that this is how you feel. And the reason is because at the center of these decisions that we try to make is a tug of war between our values and our feelings. Yeah. And if we only listened to our values to make decisions and say, well, nope, these are my values, that's what I have to do, and we ignored how we were feeling about it, our feelings can be like the Hulk, man. They can be monsters that are incredibly powerful, and they can overthrow your values if you get them worked up too much. And so we have to recognize those feelings and honor them to say, I get that this is how you feel right now, to at least acknowledge and keep them at bay so that they don't try to pull us off balance. If we only listened to our feelings and we ignored our values, well, we would never stay committed to that because we don't really care at the end of the day. So that's why a good decision has to include both of those things. They have to actually be born out of those things that matter most, so that you can look and ask yourself, does this decision honor or violate my black sheep values? If they honor them, you're in good shape. If they violate them, why are you making that decision? What is it that's driving you to do that? grab all the facts that you can gather and then make sure that those things are all in alignment before you make your decision, because that's the best chance you have of influencing an outcome. You won't control it, but you can influence it. And that is the goal of a good decision.
I love it. I'm going to throw you for a little bit of a loop here. I think, I think you've gotten through some of the questions I already had, but this is one of the biggest things of why I kind of threw motivational stuff out the window. And let me tell you why. I thought there was always two things at work in my past that were working against it.
Okay.
I used to be like so into Tony Robbins, everything he wrote, everything he did, and then the change came into his life that affected me.
Yeah.
And I don't want to, cast aspersions on him at all, but it changed the way I looked at everything from then on. And I think the two things that worked that destroyed my I don't know my faith in that or whatever, but was money and relationships. If you're not financially free, it affects how
Absolutely. Yeah.
And if you're in a relationship that's not, working for you, and it just gets into the way of everything. If you're really into motivation and all these things, but if you don't have those two things together, for some reason, it just seems like everything goes out the window. Yeah. And I'm not, that's not really about the book or whatever, but maybe it is. I don't know, but
it's about your values.
Right, okay.
And what happened was you witnessed behavior that violated a value or two.
Yeah.
and because of that, once you know the truth, and this is the tough part, man, once you know the truth. So the reason that people don't want to do this work is because it establishes sort of this structure of what you say matters most to you. And so if these are your rules, right? Here are my rules. And as long as the things exist are within my rules, then everything is good. But the minute we establish rules, we are conditioned to be rule followers. Right? You don't just get in the car and drive and do whatever you want to do and ignore, every light and sign that's there. You're a rule follower. We are all rule followers. And so when we establish rules for our lives, guess what happens? We become rule followers. Yeah. And when we don't like it, when it violates that radical freedom that we have lived with by winging it our whole lives, then all of a sudden, when we break the rules, we feel bad about ourselves. So what's the best way to not feel bad about yourself is to not know what the rules are. So then you have nothing to feel bad about. And so that's why we don't do the work. I'm not kidding when I say it's a fraction of 1% of people that do this work. But the ones who do are killing it. They are killing life. It is a competitive advantage that overcomes everybody else that's winging it. And when there are that many people winging it, man, there's so much opportunity in front of you that why wouldn't you want to figure this stuff out? Why wouldn't you want to be able to speak these things into existence to change what's possible for you? That's what I did. And here I am a year later in a completely different position than I was in January of 2019.
Wow. So let's dive into like the corporate space, or just having even a small mid-sized business of hiring people. Well, let me ask you this. Should you hire people with those same core values of your company, or if you already have those people already in-house, how do you deal with them aligning with the core values of your company from there?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a great question, brother. Listen, so here's the thing. You don't want to hire people that have all the exact same shared values, because there's no diversity at all, right? Yeah. So we want that diversity of thought beyond the traditional forms of diversity that we desperately need as well. And so one of those things, what I would say is, most organizations that I work with, after they go through this work, they realize that a lot of their corporate core values are lipstick they're not real. They're not real.
Yeah.
And so what happens is this, and this is what I teach to these corporations, is your core values have to connect your head and your heart, right? They have to. That's what makes them memorable. It's why it's the same science of why we remember song lyrics, why we remember movie quotes, because these things that are our favorites are our favorites because they connect our head and our heart in a really powerful way. So we have these things born in our hearts that are connected through these incredible experiences that we've had over the course of our lives. And so this idea of when you're hiring someone, it's not so much that all their values align. It's more that you don't want to hire someone that has a value that is in direct conflict with your core values, because that is something that won't be able to be resolved. And so the idea here is what you want to find out is there's a lot of complementary values that go alongside each other really nicely. And that's what you want. That's benefiting from the collective strengths of everybody in the organization. And so why you want to figure this stuff out is not to align value for value. It's more to make sure that there's not this errant value that somebody really is one of their core things that's a non-negotiable. And if that violates one of your organizational values, there's nothing you're going to be able to do to resolve that. So that's why you want to sort of figure out the right fit. And that's the word that people use in this case. Are they the right fit for the organization? Do they fit into the culture of the organization? So you might experience some shared values, yes, but not all of your flock. Just the occasional one or two, and then the rest become these complementary side dishes to the organizational values that they want to sort of govern their companies by.
I love it. So I want to ask you this one now too, because I have a lot of guests that come on the show, and it's not just the guests, but a lot of people will talk about, make your business out of your story. Your story should be your business. And do you think that circumstances or events in your life affect your black sheep, your core values in that way? Or are you still saying that it's just innate before those circumstances?
So what I would say is that it's more than a narrative and your story are where these values are born from, right? And so these experiences that you've had over the course of your lives are why you have developed the values that you have. The challenge comes in that sometimes our values are born from very painful experiences. So what Maslow calls peak experiences are these really incredible moments where everything sort of aligns and you're like, oh my gosh, that was amazing. And it becomes this thing. And maybe it was instilled in you by your family or friends or community or however you grew up. Those are great when they exist, but there's also a whole bunch of values that are born out of really painful experiences where you tell yourself, I don't care what my circumstance is, I'm never going to turn into that guy or that gal or whatever that is. You know what I mean? And so that becomes part of your narrative, right? But at the same time, you are the writer of your own story. And so what I like to say is I break things down into the what, why, and how. The what are our black sheep values. The why is our purpose, and the how is our mission. And so the what and the why, they rarely change, right? You have to start with what, because the why is born from the what. So for me, creativity, hope, impact, empathy, family, authenticity. Those are my black sheep. My purpose is to creatively impact others by authentically providing hope. So if it sounds familiar, it's because it's filled with my black sheep values. They're in alignment with each other. If we start with why, what are the odds that any of our black sheep values appear when we've never discovered them? And so that's just not how we get alignment between our what and why. We have to start with these things, and then we use those things. We activate those values into a purpose we choose, and then we can live out that purpose however we want to, because we become adaptable, we become resilient, because our what and our why are actually aligned with each other. And that's where most people miss the boat.
I see. And I I'm going to talk to you after the show or whatever, some of the time about the what, because I thought you were going somewhere else with the what at first, but it's okay. Because I had a different theory about the what, but that'll be a whole nother show if we're going to get into that. But I know we're coming up against it here a little bit, but talk about forgiveness, because I feel like this is a very important part of the book. Or you can explain this here. Just talk about the importance of forgiveness.
Yeah.
Please.
So we've had people like Brene Brown over the last 5 or 6 years really bring the subject of vulnerability to the table, right? And how vulnerability is a strength. And I love her. I love everything about her. And her message is incredibly important and real, which is vulnerability is a strength, and we need to stop treating it like a weakness. Yeah. Part of being vulnerable is allowing yourself forgiveness. When we don't forgive ourselves, it makes it incredibly important to move forward. And what I try to get people to understand is in that tug of war that we talked about earlier between our black sheep values and our feelings, our black sheep values are born from the past, right? They live in the past. These aspirational sheep that we sometimes put down of who we want to be, well, that's the future. And the future is filled with uncertainty. And because of that uncertainty causes our brains anxiety chemically. It's biological. So anything that our brains can't be certain about is looked at as a threat. And so it puts us into fight or flight and all those other sorts of issues that we have. And so the idea is to stay in the present, right? So we have to stay in the present because that's where our black sheep live, are in the present. They don't live in the future. The past we can't change, but the present is where all of our decisions need to be made. And so this idea of forgiveness helps us stay in the present, right? So we can forgive ourselves from decisions that we made 5 years, 5 years, 10 years, 30 years ago, that we have to forgive ourselves for if we want to stay in the present, right? Otherwise, we're going to be sucked back to the past and we're going to be depressed over things that we did that we're ashamed of. So far past and back in our lives that they're not really serving us anymore. Right. So we have to forgive that part, right? We have to forgive ourselves that we're not going to look too far in the future because we don't control that. We don't control it. Let's focus on the present. And interestingly enough, depending on what people's spiritual beliefs are or what their religious beliefs are, the Bible tells us that if you want forgiveness from God, you have to actually forgive someone else first. And that is a difficult practice, right? If you want forgiveness, you have to forgive someone else. And that's what got me started in that practice of self-forgiveness, is by forgiving others that had crossed me in some way, shape, or form, that there was nothing being served by me holding a grudge. And so in that practice of forgiveness of others, I was able to find the self-forgiveness and know that perfection is never, ever the goal. Ever the goal. Fanzo will tell you that all day long. Perfection is never the goal.
True that.
And there's beauty in imperfection, and we just have to learn to recognize that.
I love it. And I tell you what, I was just going to tell you, I want people to read the book for this part, because I think this part about the favorites, the exercise with the favorites, is just dude, it's brilliant, dude. It is brilliant. You trust me, read this book. We're not going to share that. You have to read this book, because that part of the book about the favorites is gold. Okay. I will tell you this. Showgirls, I don't know, but 13, it's a good movie. 13 going on 30, Legally Blonde, Can't Buy Me Love. I was like, wow, these are my favorites. And I didn't really think about it until you put this in the book. Yeah. People read that book. You have to read that book to really get the grasp of that. It's just like, you have to live out your core values, and you can't do that unless you really know what those are. And trust me, go through this guy, get this guy's book, go through the worksheet, please. And I'm not sure if you want to get on the tracking sheet. Maybe you're gonna have to track it somehow, because there's exercises you have to track it once you know. Yeah.
We'll give it to everybody.
Okay. So so let me just actually a few more questions here. Tell us why it's so important to utilize your black sheep, which are either your daily work or how you approach people. It's not, I would say, I would say, isn't it already innate? Well, whatever, but tell us maybe like how important it is to just approach people with your black sheep. Go and step into a building with your black sheep. Live it on a daily basis. Why is it important that way?
Yeah. So here's the end of the farmer's story, Brian, and this is why, and it is the exact reason why you want to lead with these black sheep values. So even though these sheep farmers don't value black sheep exactly like they value the rest of the flock, they still value black sheep, but just in a very different way. So sheep farmers keep one black sheep for every 100 white sheep in their care as a marker, right? And so if they have say in the morning they get up, the very first thing they do is they look out over their flock. If they've got 500 sheep in their care, they should see 5 black sheep, 1 for every 100, right? If they don't see the 5 black sheep, then they know something is wrong. There's wolves, famine, disease, whatever it might be. It's the black sheep's ability to stand out from the 495 other things that look exactly, or at least really close to the same, that gets the farmer's first look. They get the first look every day. Wow. Well, I don't know about you, but I want everybody's first look. I want my family's first look. I want my church's first look. I want my community's first look. I want my business's first look. I want to be the one that they look to when they need help. And that, to me, only happens when we lead with the things that make us authentically unique, which are those black sheep values. And so if you're not leading with those things that make you that original, you're going to look like the 495 other people that are doing the exact same thing. And that's not what you were born for. That is not what you were made for. You were made to lead with these values so that people can appreciate you for the unique creation that you are.
Yeah, I love it. And that just goes into my next question. People hide their black sheep to appeal to others. I know you talked about that. Mm-hmm. I find that I do that a lot. Can you tell us why we do that and why it's important to get out of that practice?
Yeah, we're afraid of what people might think of us if they knew what really mattered.
Right.
Right. Yeah. That's what ends up happening, is that we spend so much time projecting these aspirational sheep, telling people that this is what we care about, when in fact we don't at all. But because we've tried to live that narrative for sometimes years, if not decades of our lives, when we all of a sudden say, no, actually, I figured this out, and here are the things that matter to me, we get really nervous that people are going to look at us like we're now all of a sudden we're some sort of living this lie, when in fact we actually have figured out what really matters. But because we've been living a lie, this fake idea, it's Instagram culture, right? It's this idea where we put out the best of, oh, look at my life, it's amazing, when really the walls could be crumbling down around us, but we don't want anyone to see that because vulnerability sucks. And so we project out these things of how we want to be perceived, but they're not actually the fabric of who we are. And so it's not real. Yeah. And if you've ever tried to live something that's not real for any length of time, it becomes exhausting to hold up that facade day in and day out.
Yeah. Yeah. And I find someone just popped up to me, like just going on a job interview and just telling a whole bunch of stuff that you know is not you. You're just trying to get a job, but you're like, yeah, I'm into that. Yeah, I can do that. And I'm glad that I got out of that practice. Like even if you're just going out to get a job, share who you are. mean, hopefully you know who you are. Hopefully you know who you are, but share who you are, and that's something that you think people want you to be, basically.
You want to blow somebody away in an interview. Tell them how you're going to engage with their organizational values based on your black sheep values. So if they told you that transparency is one of their organizational values, you need to show them how you would engage with transparency. So you need to say, look, here are my black sheep values. These are the things that make me who I am and make me just irreplaceable at a place of business like this. So for me, I have to figure out, how can I creatively approach transparency to have the type of impact that I need it to be? How can I use transparency to bring hope to people on my team? How can I use transparency to have the type of impact that's going to drive the business further? Can I use empathy in some way, shape, or form to amplify transparency within the team dynamic? If you start talking about these are uniquely tied to you and what you're bringing to the table. You want to blow somebody away. You approach it in that way, and they go, oh my gosh, this person, like, they've thought through what they're actually going to add to the culture of the organization. Yeah. And that is hard to beat. It's hard to beat.
I love it, man. Incredible stuff. I told people to come on and make sure they got this on here. So I have one last question that I ask all of my guests.
Okay.
Because we really could have gone on to, what you do, how you got into the speaking realm. I know fans will talk about that last week. Mm-hmm. But I thought this is even just more important, just to get all this in, because I think this is just I think you have something incredible here. Like, and we talked about it before the show, like this I see this being branded everywhere, dude. I mean, that's no lie. I see this coming for you. The biggest question I have, or the last question I have, is about authority in the space. Mm-hmm. People are, and of course somebody's calling in on here. Someone's calling in on the wrong time. But somebody sees you. They love what you're saying, Brant. They love what you're saying. They love what you do here. They love your story. They have a similar maybe a similar background. They want to do what you're doing. They want to be the authority in this space. Mm-hmm. Can you give them a few words of how you did it and how they might be able to somehow mimic some of your success?
So I don't know how you do anything unless you find out what matters most to you.
Yeah.
Because you will never stay committed to whatever goal you put out there until you find these things that make you stay committed. And the only things that make us stay committed are the things that are those non-negotiable things that matter most to us. Yeah. And so the first thing I would say is discover what yours are, right? You can't wait. You can't wait till you're in the middle of a crisis to try to figure this stuff out. Yeah. And that's what happened to me. And it's the reason I wrote the book. Is my son, as you know, was battled cancer, and I didn't have any of these things defined. And I go back to 2012 when all this stuff happened, and I beat myself up over so many horrible decisions I made because I didn't have these things defined in my life. And if I would have had the roadmap as to how to honor the things that matter most and take away this idea of an outcome being the basis for my happiness. And instead, I had a great result with my son beating cancer and surviving, but I still felt awful because I made all these horrible decisions. And so if I can honor those things and remove my happiness from whether or not something has the outcome that I wanted it to have, if I know that I honored the things that matter most to me, you've already won. You're already successful. You're already so far ahead of the game that if you continue to make enough decisions like that back to back to back to back, I don't know how you don't become that success that you want to be. If you want to be the authority, you can't wing it. There's nobody winging it that's an authority.
True.
But if you're winging it right now, You have to find those things that matter most, use those things to keep you committed to what you want to be an authority on. And then you can start to live that out. You can speak it into existence and people will listen to what you have to say.
Yeah. I love it.
Mic drop right there.
Yeah,
Boom.
there you go. Exactly. You saw I had no words to that, right? There was an awkward pause over there. I was like, yeah, I have nothing after that. Nothing.
Love it.
Absolutely nothing.
Take your words away.
So please tell us where people can find you after the show, because they're going to be listening in, so they can connect with you.
You bet. So you can go to brantmenswar.com right up there on the screen right now. You can go to findyourblacksheep.com about the book. The book is available for pre-order right now everywhere you buy books, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, Books A Million, Indigo chapters in Canada. It doesn't matter wherever they're at. The book comes out September 29th. And I told you I'm going to give you, we'll give away one of these before anybody can get their hands on it as a thank you for those who are tuning in. So I will send you that book to send to them. I'll sign it and hopefully they take it and start to change what's possible in their life.
Yeah, great. As me and Brant were talking before, I'm doing a giveaway. I want you to get this book. Just trust me, it is a game changer. You have no idea how much this has affected my life in the matter of a week's time. All right. I'm telling you, it is that good. It is that game changing. You can go to gobuythisnow.com. It'll get you onto the giveaway if you want to do that. Or if you just want to support him, just go and support him wherever you need to go. But if you want to jump on this, we're going to get you, one of these people are going to get a $100 Amazon gift card just for the support. And he's going to, like you said, he's going to tag along with that.
Right here, the finish, the hard copy right there. That's where it is.
So jump on that, support this man. It's not, I mean, not just a support, it's going to support you. It's going to be a game, a life. I feel it's going to be a life-changing thing for you, not just for your life, also for your business, your organization, how you approach, everything in life, everything you want to do. And be successful at it. You have to know these core values. You have to live it. And I think for a lot of us, we don't, and we can't figure out everything else from there, because we're like I said, we're winging it. We're trying everything, and we're not hitting that bullseye. We're hitting everything else, but not that bullseye. So
that's right. Get
this book here. Go to his website, connect with this man, get that tracking sheet, go through his worksheet. And maybe do it again, track it, make sure it's good, it's precise, which I have to do now. For sure. I knew I did.
That's right.
Right. Go through my favorites as well.
That's right.
And just do the work, because I think this is so important. So, Brant, we are done. Do you have any final words that you want to share before we get out of here?
I guess my words would be this. I don't know that there's ever been a more important time in the world to define the things that matter most. We have witnessed over the last 4 or 5 months what winging it can do, right? It's incredibly dangerous. And here we are in the middle of a global pandemic where we're starting to learn some of the things that really provide those rules that help us battle this back and get back to what life needs to be. My question is, when we get back to how life needs to be, are you going to be disappointed that you didn't figure this stuff out so that you can hit the ground running and change what's possible? Or are you going to sit there and go, man, I just wasted a year of my life when I was forced to stay home, forced to read books, forced to do all these things that I didn't want to do. I'm tired of Zoom. I am so zoomed out, right? Can you take this time to set yourself up for the type of success that you can't even dream of right now? Figure this stuff out so that you become more adaptable, you become more resilient. And when we hit the ground running in 2021 or wherever the world gets back to normal, gosh, think about what's going to be possible when you have your life in order, when you know what matters most, and you're making decisions that are going to affect not just you, but everybody around you. That's the type of impact that I want in my life. And I hope it's the type of impact you want in yours.
Enough said. that's the wrap for this Authority Project episode. Brant, thank you so much.
Thanks, brother.
You coming through. I appreciate you coming through here and showing us how.
Thanks for giving me the moment, man. I appreciate it.
That's it for the Authority Project. Remember, you are the project, and we want to put authority to your name so you can sell more of what you're great at and be who you want to be. All right, take care, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Authority Project.
And that's a wrap for this episode of The Authority Project. Thanks so much for tuning in. And if you like what you heard, we want to hear from you. Subscribe, rate, and give an honest review. Share and tell your friends so they can hear too. And for even more authority-building tactics, be sure to sign up at theauthorityletter.com. Get free weekly content and ongoing digital product giveaways to help you on your entrepreneurial journey. We certainly hope you got a key takeaway, or maybe an aha moment from today's broadcast. Just remember, it's your authority. Build it, share it, and they will come. Until next time.